Hello, welcome back to the breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. All right, so I've got an update for you guys regarding ceasefire talks between Ukraine and Russia. Earlier this morning, I gave you an update that U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin were going to be holding a phone call to discuss a 30-day ceasefire in this war between Ukraine and Russia and a potential end to the war as well. So I have a new update here on your screen. Trump claims Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks will begin immediately. President Donald Trump expressed optimism following a 2-hour phone call on Monday with Russian President Vladimir Putin about immediately starting ceasefire talks with Ukraine. Okay, so in just a little bit, I'll show you guys the actual statement coming out from Trump on X today, as he did state that Ukraine and Russia are going to begin ceasefire negotiations immediately. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. I also have some updates from Vladimir Putin himself. He was speaking to reporters soon after holding this phone call with Trump. And we also have information from Volodymyr Zelensky as well today, the Ukrainian president. He has responded to these talks between Trump and Putin today as well. So let's go ahead and jump into this, guys. We're going to hop on over here to X. Let me start giving you some of the details from this phone call today. So we'll start off here with the Ukrainian review. Trump asked Zelensky before talking to Putin what he should discuss with him, according to the Wall Street Journal. Zelensky told Trump that he wanted to discuss a 30-day ceasefire and the possibility of holding a Russian-Ukrainian summit with his participation. Okay, so early this morning, I let you guys know that for some reason, Zelensky and Trump had held a phone call just prior to Trump speaking to Putin. And we didn't know exactly what the details were, but according to Wall Street Journal, they're stating that Zelensky talked to Trump about a 30-day ceasefire and also possibly holding a Russian-Ukrainian summit with his participation. Now, that could possibly be at the Vatican. I do have some information on that today. We've been hearing that recently. The Pope has stated that he was willing to hold a summit there and allow Ukraine and Russia to negotiate to try to end this war. So let's move on to another update now from Nexta. Breaking: Trump finishes 2-hour phone call with Putin. Russia and Ukraine will immediately begin ceasefire talks. The war could end. Tone was excellent, Trump says. So here's a statement from Trump on True Social today. Just completed my 2-hour call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. I believe it went very well. Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war. The conditions for that will be negotiated between the two parties, as it can only be, because they know details of a negotiation that nobody else would be aware of. The tone and spirits of the conversation were excellent. If it wasn't, I would say so now, rather than later. Russia wants to do large-scale trade with the United States when this catastrophic bloodbath is over, and I agree. There is a tremendous opportunity for Russia to create massive amounts of jobs and wealth. Its potential is unlimited. Likewise, Ukraine can be a great beneficiary on trade in the process of rebuilding its country. Negotiations between Russia and Ukraine will begin immediately. I have so informed President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, President Emmanuel Macron of France, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy, Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany, and President Alexander Stubb of Finland during a call with me. Immediately after the call with President Putin, the Vatican, as represented by the Pope, has stated that it would be very interested in hosting the negotiations. Let the process begin. Okay, so he appears to be very happy with this phone call. You can see here he's talking about the Vatican and the Pope, stating that that could possibly be a place where we see this summit being held for hosting these negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. He also informed multiple NATO leaders here as well regarding the phone call. So it looks like, according to Trump, it was very positive. Let's see what happens here when these negotiations actually start taking place. But there was your statement from Trump today. Now, for more translated, it seems that Putin spent 2 hours feeding Trump lies. The Russian dictator stated that Russia is ready for a possible temporary ceasefire if certain agreements are reached. In other words, they want 4 Ukrainian regions, which they already claim as theirs, and for weapons shipments to stop. Russia isn't making any compromises. It's simply continuing to apply pressure and issue ultimatums. Yeah, so we're still hearing that coming off from the Kremlin. They're still making their demands and whatnot. But in this clip, you're going to hear Vladimir Putin briefly, it's just like a minute long, talking about this ceasefire that Ukraine is open to, or excuse me, that Russia is open to a ceasefire deal. with Ukraine in the future and peace with Ukraine. So just go ahead and take a look at what he has to say. There will be subtitles at the bottom.
Этот разговор состоялся, да, продолжался более 2 часов. Хочу отметить, что он был очень содержательным и весьма откровенным по поводу прекращения боевых действий, перемирия. И со своей стороны отметил также, что и Россия выступает за мирное урегулирование украинского кризиса. Мы должны просто определить наиболее эффективные пути движения к миру. С президентом Соединенных Штатов о том, что Россия предложит и готова работать с украинской стороной над меморандумом по поводу возможного будущего мирного договора с определением ряда позиций, таких как, например, принципы урегулирования, сроки возможного заключения мирного соглашения и так далее, включая и возможное прекращение огня на определенное время в случае достижения соответствующих договоренностей.
Okay, so if you notice at the very end here, he talks about if certain ceasefire agreements are reached or certain agreements are reached, that they would be able to achieve a ceasefire with Ukraine. And I thought that was interesting because, again, we know a lot of the Russian demands. Ukraine will never agree to them. And stay till the end of this video because I'm going to show you guys some information that Ukraine is already coming out and rejecting any Russian demands, pretty much all the demands that they are making right now for Ukraine to make any concessions to end this war. Zelensky is already coming out and saying that they're rejecting all of them. So I'll show you that in just a minute. But take a look at this from Military News UA. Putin's statements following a call with Trump. A ceasefire with Ukraine is possible upon reaching relevant agreements. Russia is in favor of stopping hostilities, but it is necessary to develop the most effective path to peace. Russia and Ukraine must find compromises that suit both sides. Russia is ready to work on the memorandum with Ukraine, including a ceasefire. The main thing is to eliminate the root causes of the crisis. So these were some of the key statements coming out from Vladimir Putin while he was speaking, because I just showed you guys a clip. It was actually like a 3 to 4 minute speech. This was part of it right here as well. But yeah, I mean, we can see here again, they're stating eliminate the root causes of the crisis. We know some of those they're talking about, like NATO. They don't want Ukraine to join NATO. They want Ukraine to pull back from the front line, give up the 4 regions that Russia's fighting for right now. That again includes the Luhansk region, Donetsk region, Zaporizhzhia region, and Kherson regions. They don't want Ukraine to receive any more weaponry from the West. They also want Ukraine to downscale the size of their military. I mean, these are all crazy, insane demands that Russia's making that we know that Ukraine will not agree to. So just some of the statements coming out from Putin today. Also from X24, Russia's stocks surge after Putin's statement about conversation with Trump. So yeah, we basically had all across the board in Moscow today. The Moscow exchange is skyrocketing into the green. Many of these companies going +1 or up to 3%, some of them. And this was the results of the conversation, because what we're hearing is that Ukraine and Russia should be moving towards peace. So that means that no sanctions will be applied onto Russia for right now. So don't expect to hear anything about that. I think we're going to wait to see what happens over the next week or so as Ukraine and Russia continue negotiating. But the stock market did go up today in Russia. Now from Clash Report, Kremlin says Trump's position is neutral and he is really engaged in settlement issues, while the position of European politicians is openly pro-Ukrainian. Okay, so we know that the Europeans obviously stand with Ukraine. They don't stand with Russia at all. And the Kremlin's coming out saying that, well, Trump's position is neutral. He's engaged in, trying to settle the issues of this war, while the Europe basically stands in the way and is making it difficult to engage in any kind of negotiations. So kind of calling Europe out for standing with Ukraine is kind of what the Kremlin was stating here. Just wanted to share that statement coming out today. Now from Max 24, in Ukraine, all the results of the negotiations between Trump and Putin are called agreed to negotiate further. Therefore, it seems that nothing is worth expecting. Our military is already preparing for the Russian summer campaign at the front. Okay, so Ukraine allegedly agrees to negotiate further with Russia, but they're stating here at the same time they won't expect anything major to happen out of these, and they're expecting actually Russia to launch this summer campaign, a new offensive that we've been talking about for the last week now. Russia's already gearing up for that right now. If anything, they've already launched this summer offensive. So in the meantime, Ukraine's military is getting ready for a continued fight against Russia, but otherwise they have agreed to negotiate further. Now from Max 24 again, Putin and Trump did not discuss the ceasefire deadline, according to Yuri Ushakov, which is a foreign policy aide to Putin. And it says Putin and Trump discuss another prisoner exchange between Russia and the United States, 9 for 9 people. Okay, so looks like we're looking at another prisoner exchange, a 9 for 9 exchange. And we're supposed to be having like 1,000 for 1,000 exchange sometime this week, possibly by Friday. We'll see if that happens to be the case, but allegedly, they worked out another prisoner exchange, and then apparently there is no deadline for this ceasefire deal, that they're going to allow this to go on as long as necessary. I would assume as long as Ukraine and Russia both show that they are serious about ending this, because we've been talking about sanctions and all that too, so I'm not sure if Russia's going to get hit with sanctions. I'm thinking probably not anytime this week, unless we see some real concrete evidence that we haven't already seen from the Russian side that the Russians are not ready to end this war. So we're going to have to see how Trump responds to these negotiations moving forward. Now from Max 24, Ushakov says the leaders discussed the state of relations between Russia and the U.S. and spoke in favor of their further normalization. Trump sees Russia as one of the most important partners of the U.S. Putin and Trump agreed to continue dialogue on all issues, including Ukraine. The leaders do not rule out holding a personal meeting. The place and dates have not yet been determined. Conversation did not discuss a time frame for reaching a possible agreement on a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. So there's some more statements coming out from the Kremlin from Yuri Ushakov, again, the foreign policy aide to Vladimir Putin. And he did mention here again that they have not ruled out meeting in person. It looks like Trump and Putin will eventually hold some sort of meeting, and maybe Trump will meet with him sometime soon, but we haven't been able to determine the place and time for that just yet. But it's just some more statements coming out from the Russian side today. Now let's jump over to what Ukraine is talking about. So for Max 24, in Turkey, the Vatican, or Switzerland, we are considering the possibility of a meeting of delegations of Ukraine, Russia, the US, and the EU, according to Zelensky. He said that he had an hour-long conversation with Trump and European leaders. Okay, so after Putin and Trump had spoken, that's when Trump called Zelensky and spoke to other NATO leaders. And according to this information here, Turkey, the Vatican, or Switzerland could possibly be the next places that we see negotiations being held between Russia and Ukraine. So we'll see which place we happen to see this happening in the future. But we've been hearing a lot about the Vatican recently, okay? So there's some information there from Zelensky. Now for military news UA, Ukraine will not withdraw troops from its own territory and will not succumb to the ultimatums of the Russian Federation, says Zelensky. We are considering the possibility of another meeting of all teams, the USA, Ukraine, Russia, and European countries. I asked Trump not to make any decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine. We are waiting for the proposal that Russia will present. The EU sanctions package will be there and it will be strong at their appropriate dates and agreements. So this was Zelensky right here speaking to reporters today. So EU sanctions coming down onto Russia here starting tomorrow. I think it was that 17th package of sanctions. That's going to go after Russia's oil industry and sanction, I think, somewhere around 200 or so vessels that Russia uses to circumvent sanctions. Waiting for Russia's proposal here regarding a ceasefire deal. So we haven't heard much about that yet, but maybe over the next week we'll hear about that. But a big one here, he asked Trump not to make any decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine. So stepping his foot down and saying, do not negotiate with Vladimir Putin without us having a say in it. Okay, so we've been seeing a lot that with Trump recently. That he kind of just makes up these demands and comes back after speaking with Putin and says, Ukraine's got to agree to this, this, and that. And if not, we're going to start withdrawing aid and whatnot. So trying to keep Trump on his side is kind of how I see that there. But there's some statements coming out from Zelensky. And finally, the last one here from Max 24. Zelensky said that Ukraine is not going to abandon its course of joining NATO or declare neutral status. as demanded by Russia. We have our own status. It is enshrined in the Constitution. Everything is clearly stated there. Okay, so that's a big one as well. We know that Ukraine does want to get into NATO, and Zelensky coming out today and saying they are not going to abandon their course on joining NATO or declare any neutral status that we know that Russia demanded of them to do so. They don't want Russia to join into NATO at all. So I can't even see a ceasefire happening here at all, guys. I mean, we know Ukraine is not going to give in to any of Russia's demands. And for weeks now, Russia's been coming out with the same demands over and over and over. And I just don't see Ukraine agreeing to it. So let me know what you guys think here. Do you think these ceasefire talks are going to fall apart again and we're going to continue to see this war drag out even further? Or do you think Russia and Ukraine will be able to achieve a ceasefire at some point in the near future? So that's it for today's update, though, guys. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you got something out of this update, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.